Hello there, this is Kimberly Wilson, and welcome to the 485th edition of Tranquility du Jour, bringing you tranquility since 2005. Today I'm chatting with Barbara Bitondo about herbalism, making your own beauty products, the benefits of herbs over essential oils, and her favorite resources. Now, those of you who are new to Tranquility du Jour, you can learn more in the show notes at kimberlywilson.com/485. There's a link to start here. Also, we have something coming up I'm so excited about. First of all, thank you for joining me for TDJ Brunch on Saturday. I loved being with you. And the replay will be over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tranquility du Jour this week. So if you missed it, no worries. You can watch it and learn. Follow along, get some tips on how to stay focused right now because it is challenging. Also, there was a lot of talk around how to be gentle with ourselves because, we may see lots of people baking bread on Instagram, and yet we may be struggling to get out of bed. And so I just want to encourage everyone to be very gentle with yourself right now and always. But I have a lot of tips on how to do that over at the Tranquility du Jour TDJ Brunch, which again, you'll be able to find the replay on YouTube. And there's also a blog post all about it, kimberlywilson.com/blog. Now, those of you who are free on Saturday, May 2nd, I would love to have you join me for my second virtual retreat of 2020. This is basically an opportunity to take your inner artist on a 3-hour date. We will be doing yoga. We'll be doing journal writing. We'll be doing some creative work in our art journals, and we'll also be practicing mindfulness, all with a theme around how to find more tranquility throughout this pandemic. So tune in, buckle up. It's going to be an amazing 3 hours. And I've been working on the workbook, the new guidebook for it, and it's phenomenal. Lots and lots of tips, including the 10 stages of wellness, all the 10 types of wellness. There's just so much that we're going to cover in 3 hours, and I'm really, really excited to share this with you. Also, if you are thinking ahead to 2021, I have 2 single occupancy spots that have opened up in my Paris retreat, and that is happening in June of 2021. Also, there are a few spots that have opened in Provence, which is happening the week before. June 5th through the 11th, and then the 11th through the 14th. Again, all the information for this is over in the show notes, or you can find it at kimberlywilson.com. So I, for one, cannot wait to be able to smell the whiffs of lavender, just hear the sirens of Paris and the sounds of Paris, the mopeds, and like just all the activity and the lights and the sparkling Eiffel Tower. It's like, oh my gosh, whenever you can't have something, you miss it so much. And I'm so craving France right now. So if you would like to join me, 2021 is your year. So we've pushed Tuscany back. That was going to happen in 2021 to 2022. And that's going to happen end of August, early September, 2022. So would love to have you join. Also, I wanted to say a big shout out and thank you to the lovely Hannah who wrote a review of Tranquility du Jour over on iTunes. And she says, one of my faves with 3 amazing emojis. I've been listening to this podcast for years and it remains one of my faves. I'm also a big fan of Kimberly's clothing line, Tranquility, and find her advice and insight invaluable in this crazy modern world. Thank you so much, Hannah, for taking the time to write a review. I so appreciate it. And if anyone else who's listening would be willing to pen a review of the podcast, you can do so over on iTunes or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. And then also I have a little bit about it at kimberlywilson.com/review, where I would be delighted to learn about your review and send you a thank you postcard. So again, all that can be found at kimberlywilson.com/review. So a big thank you for sharing the Tranquility du Jour love, because ideally it helps other people find more tranquility in their every day. Barbara Bitondo, she reigns at Aphrodite in the Kitchen, her Apothecary Studio in Washington, D.C. She's an urban herbalist, Anna Simpler, who directs her attention to topical herbal applications using easy-to-grow, bioregional plants and flowers for wellness, beauty, and sensual delight. She grows, wild crafts, guerrilla harvests, and trades for the plants she uses. She teaches workshops on making essential oil-free bath and beauty products, designs pop-up herbal spas, and offers an exclusive quarterly spa in a jar subscription service. She twines wild, wise woman ways with Second Life and zero waste practices, making each step in her walk in beauty both a ceremony and a revolutionary act. You can find Barbara at the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference that she's been involved with for almost a decade, and closer to home at Rooting DC. And you will also see her a lot in the Tranquility du Jour Facebook group, and love all her contributions, all that she shares. And she is really an avid user of the Daybook, and we're going to have her back on the show in a few weeks to talk about that and the way she uses it and personalizes it to make it her own. Welcome, Barbara.
Oh, thanks, Kimberly.
It is a treat to have you on the show and to be chatting all things herbalism.
I know. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And, this is just it's so cool to me. I think people who bring pieces together to make beauty products. Like, I don't know. I've always thought, oh, you just get those on the shelf. And so what I love is all this great DIY stuff on how to make your own. And, the cool thing about you is you're doing it from all these beautiful, wonderful herbs. So can you talk about how you got into herbalism?
Well, Kimberly, it was kind of a natural progression. I started in my kitchen, going certified organic everything. And then I went into the cleaning department and cleaned up my act, literally, and began making cleaning products. And I went the organic cosmetic route, and where I was, buying organic cosmetics that many people enjoy, from Whole Foods and from specialty companies. And I decided that in order to align with my desire to be as close to the rhythms of the natural world as possible, and also to reduce my waste, I couldn't continue to purchase chemical products and other products from purveyors. I had to make my own. So that is the progression for me. It started in the kitchen, and it's still in the kitchen.
Well, whenever I hear you say this, I love this, right? So it is reducing, the plastic and all the things that these products come in. And I'm curious because, for me, I've got eczema, rosacea, all these annoying skin conditions. And so I'm curious, how do you work with specialty things such as those? I mean, I'm sure you've come up with your own sort of system, but you may not have those particular skin conditions.
Well, I think that whenever anybody has a skin condition and they would like to use the plants and herbal treatments to address their issue and to find balance, it is essential to go to a certified herbalist, somebody who is trained and certified in that domain. Having said that, and I study with an herbalist who I would go to and who I have gone to for, serious and just annoying skin conditions. And there are plants that are hugely supportive. Rose and calendula are two easy, accessible ones. But yes, those conditions are treatable with plants, and you can get support from the plant world for them. It helps enormously to not try to figure out yourself, to actually work with a trained professional.
Where do we find these people? Because I love this and I'd be open to it. And it's just where do we look for? I mean, I'm sure Google, but beyond that.
No, actually, I suggest that you not start at Google. I think that using references and word of mouth, especially in herbalism, is essential because there are as many kind of herbalists as there are doctors, and so it's not always just a question of finding some name and some zip code match. We are lucky because in Washington, D.C., Holly Poole Kavanaugh of Redbird Botanicals has a fantastic apothecary She is my local go-to herbalist. She also has herbal CSA, and she sees clients in her office. She's great. So that's a great place to start locally if you're in Washington. Otherwise, the International Association of Herbalists has their own list of practitioners, and I'm also happy to refer people to my teacher, who is Linda Conroy in Wisconsin, who does online and face-to-face consulting and teaching.
Listeners, will put links to these resources in the show notes, which you can find, of course, at KimberlyWilson.com. And what does it mean to be simpler? So you kind of mentioned this with regard to, making your own products. And so whenever you think about kind of being simpler with what you purchase and what you put on your body, how do you do that?
In herbalism, there are people who do things simply. They use one plant and they take the petals of the flower and fill a jar and cover the flower petals with oil and let it sit for 6 weeks and then decant it. Or they do the same with lavender in vodka, or they do something with roses in honey. So you get the idea. It's one plant and then one other product, and that is the process. So that's the simple process of not weighing and measuring and not being concerned about the potency of the end product, to just infuse the herb, the flower, the leaf, or the stem in another product. So that's what it means to be a simpler. The way it influences my work is that for the last 10 or so years of my study with the plant and with teachers, but really it's the plants that have taught me, is I've worked with one plant a year. So 1 year I worked with St. John's wort for all 4 seasons in all of my preparations. Another year I did lavender study, all preparations, all year long, all different varieties and all different parts of the plant. So that's my study has been kind of one plant a year, a deep dive into that organism, that being, that spirit, that constituency. And the way it informs my work today is I typically, when I make products, they are a one plant product. So I'll make a rose spray for my face and I won't put anything else in it. It'll just be rose spray. It won't be rose and lavender or mint and rosemary or something like that. And the reason I do this is because I like to have a relationship with the actual plant even after I've processed it and put it on my face or my skin. So that's what it means to be a simpler and how I practice it in Aphrodite in the kitchen.
And what kind of products do you make for yourself?
Oh gosh, I make everything from hair products like spritzes and hair masks to foot scrubs and bath bombs for my foot baths. So head to toe. Like I said, I usually will do combinations with one plant. So for example, I might make a rosemary foot scrub, and I'll make a rosemary hair tonic with water. I might use nettles for my hair. I make masks for my hair, face, and the rest of my body using different plants. And like I said, my go-tos really are rose, calendula, chamomile, and lavender for very accessible bioregional plants that are easy to grow. Well, roses not so much, but they're really focused on what's easy and available. I use rosemary, bay leaf, and St. John's wort, which I also harvest on my travels. So that pretty much is, it's like a 6 or 7 plant group that I'm working with typically.
So I love rose. I love everything rose, rose water spray, all this. I mean, the smell, of course, is everything. But, what are some of the healing properties of rose?
So rose is the go-to plant for face. It is such a support of a tender skin that needs gentle products. And many people use rose for conditions like rosacea. But you will often just across the board see rose elements from the rose plant or the rose family, including rose hip and rose petals and so on, in all products that are labeled kind of gentle or sensitive or mature skin. So it is definitely a support for the skin.
Good, because I do love me some rose. So I guess even like rose water, that people splash on their face. Like, I mean, that's probably lovely, and I guess you can make that.
Yeah, so let me just point out that rose is a special plant because, of course, the smell that comes off it is so hard to catch and hard to bottle and hard to preserve. So as a simpler and somebody who's very plant focused, I don't tend to buy rose products off the shelf. It means that I don't necessarily have them all year round. It's a special treat because I make my rose water the old-fashioned way, by putting the rose petals of an aromatic traditional rose, not a hybrid, into a bowl, put hot water over it, warm water, let it cool, and then use that rose water, which of course, because it's, water, it has life in it. So without preservative, it's not going to last very long. So for me, rose products are typically a very special treat. Rose products, if you're going to do them at home, need to come from dried plant material. So if it's the middle of summer and you pick roses and you want to make rose infused oil, because they're very watery, you need to dry them and then infuse them in the oil. Otherwise, you'll get a moldy mess and it won't smell very nice at all. So when you think about rose products on the shelf, you're typically getting products that have been infused with essential oils or perfume or sometimes artificial scents that appear as rose to the nose. So it's important to understand what you're dealing with, and when it comes to DIY, how you actually have to interact with the plant in order to get the maximum aromatic experience, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. And, I'm curious, do you have some formulations or recipes or so to speak that would help a beginner get started?
Yes, I do. So I'm on Facebook at Aphrodite in the Kitchen. And there in my notes section, I have all of my formulations. Again, they're very simple and they start with the basics like infused oil, infused vodka, infused honey, infused witch hazel. And with those kind of four first tier products, I use other things like sugar and teas to turn them into bath bombs and skin butter and eye cream. And I even have formulations for mascara and lip tint. So I go into makeup as well. All of my formulations and favorite products are at Aphrodite in the Kitchen on Facebook in the notes section.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And what about, I assume that you have probably learned from some wonderful people and probably have some ideas of, oh, you must follow this person on Instagram or you must pick up this book as a wonderful resource to get started. So can you share some of those?
Sure. So my teacher of many years is Linda Conroy of Moonwise Herbs. She's also the creatrix of the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference, which is the most interesting herbal conference, in my opinion, currently in North America. The speakers are always really top notch. So it's a great place to go in June. to get a sense of who's doing what in all of the different domains. So she's at moonwiseherbs.com and on Facebook and Instagram at moonwiseherbs. A couple inspirations for me are Stephanie Gerber of Hello Glow and Marie Rama of Humble Bee and Me. These two authors have written very extensively on creating bath beauty and makeup products using plants and other substances. I almost substitute all of their recipes for my own infused oils because I don't use essential oils, but those two resources, Hello Glow and Humble Bee and Me, are two excellent places to start with really sound advice for the beginning DIY person with good lists of resources and also supplies that you need, because you really do want to have the right supplies to have a good experience. So yeah, those are my go-tos.
And how is this kind of considered zero waste? And the fact that like you can make all this stuff in mason jars and you're not buying products from the shelves?
So let me just sort of take you through a quick process. So in some of the first plants that I harvest every year, rosemary comes first. Those flower typically earliest. And then my next harvest is usually lavender. And then after lavender comes St. John's wort. Roses are in there too in June. So as I harvest my plants, I immediately put some of the plant material in oil. I use basic olive oil, high quality virgin olive oil from California. So that I'm getting in bulk already. So I already have that in my home as part of my supplies, and it comes in a large container, 5 and 6 liters at a time. So I'm already not buying a bottle every week of that. I infuse my plants in in vodka. So I'm buying large gallons of vodka that I use, and I'm infusing them in mason jars that I reuse every year. And I leave them under the oil or the vodka or the whatever substance I'm using for several weeks. And then I transfer it to bottles that I've been using for years. So my rosemary oil goes into a large kind of container like you would use to keep wine. And I, decant it from the plant material and then take the infusion and put it into another container. And I dispense it into my cookware when I make the product that I'm going to make. And I put my products in small metal tins, small glass jars. All of these things I use over and over again and sanitize in boiling water and replace the caps if I need to. But basically, I'm using glass and stainless steel over and over again year round. So that's the zero waste part. I don't have wrappers. I don't have the plastic that comes, around every makeup product, and the tape and the little plastic band and all of the packaging and contraindications and publicity that comes in the fancier products. So that's what zero waste looks like.
Got it. Totally makes sense. I love this. And, because as you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, you picture all the little wrappers that come off, even if it's, it's just a bottle on a shelf. Well, it's going to be wrapped, right? So in some capacity, often boxed. And so how to actually, what would it look like to be able to make your own? And what about makeup?
So I work in a corporate role. I go to an office, and we all know the data about the importance of appearance in corporate world. So I do wear makeup. I definitely love the makeup process, and I enjoy it thoroughly. Over the years, I've developed a formulation for a cake mascara, which serves as an eyeliner. It's a clay-based vegan product that I make for myself. And I use beets and other roots to make my lip tint that I infuse in sometimes cocoa butter and some other harder oils, which we can certainly talk about. And I put that into paper tubes for myself. Sometimes I put them in tins. And so that's my lip tint. I make a bronzer for my face with cocoa powder and arrowroot. And I also make a bronzer for my legs with cocoa butter and cocoa powder, with a mix of dark and light cocoa powder. So yeah, those are some of my go-to products that are actually cosmetic, just for the joy of making beauty.
Well, and have you noticed differences with your skin or with your hair, with your nails? I don't know if you do anything kind of nail based that
Oh, I do, yes.
have you
Have I noticed any
noticed?
difference?
Yeah. Because, I'll just say this. There's one woman I follow, and I interviewed her on the podcast years ago, Paris to Go. And for the past few years, she stopped using products on her face. She stopped washing her hair, and her skin looks amazing, and her hair looks amazing. And I'm just like, that is shocking to me.
Yeah, I went the no shampoo route, and I didn't notice that my hair looked better when I went the no shampoo route, but I do have a pretty steady routine of massaging my head with infused oil of rosemary, and then using nettle, which is a classic hair herb, for a rinse. And I use cider vinegar on my hair as well. And I also set my hair with beer if I want to have curls. So those are the ways that I support the hair follicles on my head and my scalp without being heavily dependent on shampoo. Although I do make a shampoo bar with a recipe that I learned from Linda Conroy. And I also have tried my hand at soap. So yes, I do use soap, and I do notice that my hair is very vibrant. I also use products that I make on my hair. For example, I use a hair powder that has a little bit of arrowroot and charcoal in it. And I also use a spritz that's got some salt in it to give it some texture. So there are definitely all kinds of at-home things that I use on my own body that I feel enhances its appearance. In terms of skin, I think that skincare should be something that supports your skin. And so using oil or a saponified cleanser is a good idea, especially if you live in the city, because so many particulates are in the air that collect on the skin. But you can certainly, you don't need to be soap based to have vibrant skin. Massage of the face with oils, and some people like rollers. Just learning how to give a face massage are wonderful ways to support the skin's natural elasticity and vibrancy, and to have a nice look without makeup. So yes, definitely I have noticed a difference, and I find that the practices are easy and very satisfying.
Yeah, no, that's so good to know, because it is, it's almost like you go to the doctor, you get more pills, right, to fix, an issue, or more creams or more ointments. And, you're just like, oh my gosh, if I just stopped all this, would it get better?
Likely.
Right? It's always like, oh, yeah. So it's helpful. Thank you. Thank you for kind of sharing your experience, because there's another woman who I had interviewed, and you may even remember her. She was a teacher back at the studio back in the day, and I know you and I go way back, but Lisa Farmer Richards, and she had all these allergies and skin issues coming up, and so she created her line of CBD infused skincare, and and has found it to be super helpful. So it's just interesting, how people struggle with something, and then they go out and they create something that then in turn helps others.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about being a simpler is, you can put something on your skin and watch the reaction and not wonder which element of the product it was. If you have infused oil of lavender and you put it on your face and you have a reaction, you know that it's either the oil or the lavender, because there's nothing else in there. And the same with, calendula. Many people like calendula for face products because it's a classic go-to. It's got so many benefits. But if you have allergies to other plants in the Asteraceae family, including ragweed, it could be actually giving you problems. And a lot of people don't make that connection. And a lot of even herbal products have so many different ingredients that it's hard to tease them out. So making your own is a very, making your own with information and carefully monitoring the experience and the process is a great way to care for yourself and to become more self-sufficient and really to have agency over your own well-being.
I love that. I think that's something that we're all looking for or could benefit from. Now, my other question for you is, and I'm sure some of our listeners are like, what's the difference between infused oils and essential oils? So can you talk about the difference between the two and what you have found, to work best for you?
Okay, so infused herbal oils are like what I described before. You take the fresh or the dried plant material like lavender or rosemary or calendula or chamomile. These are plants that many and not rose too, but that's not my go-to. And you put it under oil for 6 weeks and let it sort of infuse the oil with its aroma. So that is an infused oil. Infused oils use a small amount of plant material, and they take about 6 weeks to steep. Essential oils use a lot of plant material and are usually the smell and the oil is extracted with either a chemical or a water boiling process. So really the biggest difference is the amount of plant material that's needed and also the technology. Anybody can infuse an oil with a plant or a flower, but not anybody can create an essential oil. So that's the main difference, I would say. Infused oils are full strength and usually need to be diluted before use, whereas essential oils are full strength and need to be diluted typically before use, whereas an infused oil is very subtle and will typically not have any cause any rash or burn or any reaction that an essential oil might cause if it's not diluted and handled properly and with care. So that's the big difference.
Has it been tough for people who prefer infused oils to see the kind of boom in the popularity of essential oils over the past few years?
I don't know, because I've always wanted to have a more direct relationship with the plants. And so automatically an infused oil is several times removed from the plant. And so I haven't really explored it too much. I've just always appreciated the experience of getting to know the plants and spending time with them and harvesting them myself and processing them from the ground to the kitchen to my skin to the compost heap. So that's really been my journey. I don't know what other herbalists are doing or thinking. It's such a diverse group of people.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that many different people would be drawn to this, from like slow movement to zero waste to back to nature, it's to people struggling with various skin or, conditions that are like, let me see if I could actually create my own and it might work better.
Yeah, I think this is really and the reason I don't make products to sell is because I think it's so much more empowering to teach people how to make their own. And that really has been my focus over the last several years, many years. I also think just like we do with our food, we really have to trace the supply chain. And when it comes to essential oils, it's very difficult to determine that the acres and acres and acres of monoculture have not been treated with herbicide and pesticide. Even if it says certified organic, it's very hard to even imagine how that's possible with the boom in and the exploding market of essential oils. And then, of course, you've got the packaging and the transportation from all over the world. So what I'm trying to introduce in my work and what I'm trying to do with my life is to just be much more bioregional, hyper local, zero waste, and really just delight in the adventure of discovering what's possible when I actually say no to other people's products and yes to my own self-sufficiency.
Mm-hmm. That is beautiful. I think that's so well said to kind of sum up, where you have come from with this and where your, how it really fits your value system. And I'm curious. So you and I, of course, go way back. And are any of your formulations inspired by anything kind of Tranquility du Jour related? I mean, every time you've said rose, I've basically found myself like salivating and my heart palpitating of excitement. I love everything rose. And so I'm just curious, is there anything that kind of stands out to you that feels very TDJ?
Totally. There are two products in particular that are TDJ inspired. The first one is my Rosa rugosa salve, which is basically my version of rosebud salve, which I know you use and have talked about on different places that I've seen you videos or something. And I my formulation is on my Facebook site, and I use it for lips, cuticles, to soften my hands and even fix my hair after yoga, just like you probably do. The other product are my vegan bath fizzies. So probably until 2018, I was using a lot of milk products in my bath experiences because milk has a beautiful reaction on the skin. But because of TDJ and a lot of your discussions about compassionate living, I've discovered the many benefits of vegan bath fizzies. So fizzy products for the bath that don't contain animal products, including cream or milk. So I know that you say baths are balm for the soul, and I'm all about it. And I'm glad I have made a product that is TDJ approved.
I love it. And listeners, I'll definitely link to these in the show notes. And yeah, lovely. Both of them sound like must-haves. And my last question for you, Barbara, of course, the name of this podcast is Tranquility du Jour. And I'm curious how you find tranquility in your everyday. And I'm thinking it might involve herbalism.
It does. And it really also involves some of your suggested practices. I mean, I have a morning routine that involves checking on my plants in the morning before breakfast. It involves usually having some kind of fruit and vegetable for breakfast. So I'm right with the plant world right early on in the day. My morning routine in the bathroom involves, washing my face with infused oil, usually rose or lavender, and, moving on from there with, hand lotions and foot scrubs and whatever else that I'm using that day. So definitely my infusion of tranquility and my plant allies are with me from the get-go. And your checklists every day help me out too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing all of this. I'm really excited. I'm going to go try out that recipe. And, so thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Kimberly.
So mentioned in the podcast, there is a link to find her over on Facebook at facebook.com/herbalspa and on Instagram at Barbara Bitondo. There are also links to resources, including recipes that she mentioned. And I also have a link to the blog post that I mentioned about TDJ Brunch. And of course, you will find the replay over on the YouTube channel. So visit KimberlyWilson.com/podcast for more episodes and to download the Tranquility du Jour podcast app, which is available for iPhone and Android users. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Overcast. And if you are not signed up for Love Notes, please do so. You're going to get exclusive content, personal updates, giveaways, and access an abundance of multimedia resources through Tranquil Treasures. There's also a link to browse my 6 books and planner, and then ways to follow along on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, etc. And finally, there's a link to Tranquility, my seasonless, vegan, locally made, eco-friendly fashion line. So thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you're hanging in there. I know this is a challenging time, and please reach out if there's anything I can do to support you. I'm offering these free community events, the virtual retreat, and sending lots and lots of love through the weekly love notes and every other week podcast and every other week Tea with Kimberly episodes. So I hope they're helpful and that they're helping just infuse a little bit of love into these challenging times. So wishing you a delightful, delightful week ahead. And thank you again for being part of Tranquility du Jour. Namaste.